Welcome to the Zen Stoic Path. On this episode, we bring on a special guest. We have Jeff Banman, the host of Mindset Radio and the founder of The Anchored Human. Now, Jeff has been a guest on this show before, and I decided to invite him back on because what he shared with me on that first episode absolutely changed my life, which is known as the return to original breath. It has not only changed my life, but it has changed the lives of my clients, my students, and even the people closest to me. Now, the return to original breath is a way of regulating the central nervous system through our breath alone. And it answers the one question that we all have in the back of our minds constantly, which is, am I safe? So in this episode, we talk about how to create safety in the body by regulating our nervous system, by feeling our emotions, by enjoying our lives, and doing what truly brings us joy and fulfillment. Jeff also shares what he seeks to create a legacy with, which is what is known as the anchored birth. Now, the anchored birth is a way of bringing children into the world that allows them to come into a world where everyone's nervous system in the room, including the parents, are completely regulated by doing the return to original breath. When this happens, the baby's nervous system is primed with safety and tranquility. And since the recording of this episode, I got to share this knowledge with some friends of mine who recently had a baby, and they had the most magical and tranquil experience for the birth of their child. And it shows with the child. It is the most chill baby that I've ever met. And it was such a beautiful thing to see this work in real time. So I'm really excited for you to get into the episode. Enjoy this conversation with Jeff Banman. Jeff, it's so good to have you back on the show, man. I have to say, from that first episode that we recorded, you showed me the return to our natural breath. And that one little technique has not only changed my life, it's changed the lives of my clients, my students, and now it's going to even get to spread to our listeners through our sovereign awareness technique. So thank you so much for sharing that, and welcome back to the show.
Yeah, brother, no worries. I'm glad I'm glad it helped. Simple little things that presented contextually well, in my opinion, often can make the biggest impact in all of us. And yeah, I just finished, 45 minutes of it this morning, just kind of needing to release other energy and reset and come into my own space. So, man, it works.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And for those who didn't get to listen to the first episode, what is the return to natural breath? And
yeah, so I generally call it the return to original breath, right?
Original breath, yes, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and the concept is, somewhere between, age 0 to 5, 6, 7, depending upon just your track, your maturity track, your evolution. We breathe in a very distinct way because we're not logical thinking beings yet. We're still developing upstairs, and but we need the capacity to kind of sense and feel into the world, and regulate. Am I safe? Am I okay? Is this all right? Can I do this? Was this going to hurt me? Did that hurt me? Was that good? And all that's going on in the system during that period. It's like, your calibration zone to what's happening. And as your body is adapting to its environment, you are breathing in a way that, that is, very rhythmic, right? And so the breath is fairly simple. As an adult, we put a little more on it just because it helps us begin to formulate some things, but fairly simple technique. You're going to breathe in through your nose, but you're going to do it intentionally, right? Because there's two components to this that are very important. There is the essence of taking control, especially as an adult now. A lot of times we don't feel in control of ourselves or our circumstances or our life or whatever it might be. And so it's an opportunity to remind ourselves how much in control of our system we are. So in through the nose by deliberate action. So intentionally breathe in, take that breath all the way down to the diaphragm, extend that diaphragm, and if you're doing it for the first time, it may be hard. Right? Because if you're not a belly breather, you've got to rebuild that whole muscle system down there. But deep down into the diaphragm, and then once you hit peak, you can practice and hold a little bit if you want, play with it, find out where you like it. But then you enter the aspect of giving up control. So literally at that point, all you're going to do is open your mouth, relax your jaw, and you're just going to allow breath to naturally leave the body. You're not going to breathe out. You are not participating in the breath leaving the body. You are giving permission to the body to regulate itself and just allow that breath to leave. And, that's triggering your vagal nerve. It's sending signals of safety to your brain. You'll get that vestibular wobble, which is the key sign that your system is actually settling in and regulating itself against the conditions around. And 3 to 5 minutes of that is magic. And the reason why I call it a return to original breath, that's what we did, right? That's how we you look at the kids around, they're all belly breathing. They don't care. They got nothing to prove or this or that or anything. They're just hanging out, and they're constantly connecting to the environment around them from a physiological standpoint, right? It's more in body. And, and that allows things to naturally expel what doesn't need to be there, check in, okay, I'm good, and off we go. And so it's been wildly successful. I've had a lot of success with it. And I've trained a bunch of people in it, and I find it to be fairly simple. It's just routine. If you do it, you do it. If you don't, you don't.
It is magical. Especially, I remember you telling me on the first show that, hey, if you do this for a week, 2 weeks, you'll start to just notice that your life is different. Like, it influences the way that you think about things, the way that you see the world, because it is a way of communicating to your body, at least that I've found in the experience, in the months that I've been doing this now, of communicating, I am safe. Because you'll never be able to tell yourself, I am safe. Like in your in your dialogue, it's not going to work. But if you breathe into it, it actually communicates that message in a really interesting way. And by coming from a place of safety, which I know that that word can feel a little loaded for people listening, but because safety is not just
the only question. It's the only thing that matters. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And we need safety in a variety of different realms in our modern world, not just, being safe from a saber-toothed tiger or something, but actually like, do I feel emotionally safe? Do I feel psychologically safe? And this breathing technique, I notice, brings me into that and communicates to my body, like, yes, I am safe. And like, this is how I'm telling myself in a very profound way.
Yeah, safe is not an upstairs answer. You will not find it in your brain. It fully comes from your body. And to me, and I've said this for a long time, and I can't remember if we talked about it or not, but that is really the only question that matters. And today, while we may be more physically safe, we are far less safe, like you said, in so many ways. Am I safe to say this, do this, be this, share this, whatever it might be? And it's overwhelming. I mean, that's my Banman theory is the reason why we have such a massive issue with anxiety, ADHD, all these things we're dealing with. It's because in those early phases, that mechanism of safe got disrupted, or anchored into something that isn't technically safe, but because it was mom or dad, it must be safe, right? And the confusion starts. So yeah, man, I mean, that's really it. If we can just just get to that place, like, I'm okay, I'm good, I'm safe right now. Okay, this is okay, and we start, listening in. Man, the world gets a whole lot different pretty quickly.
It does. It's almost a passage to fully be in the human experience. I notice there's a lot of, especially like in New Age think or like spiritual circles, there's a lot of talk of ascension and essentially not being here. And every time I hear that, I'm like, you incarnated as a human being. Stop trying to not be here. It's not very spiritual of you. Like,
Yeah, this is why would you not want to be? This is it. This is part of the journey. I don't know. Have you ever read Conversations with God?
yeah, years ago.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring it up because I was literally thinking to myself, I'm going to go back through it like a couple days ago. I'm like, I'm going to be getting the audiobooks and going back through that.
Yep.
But yeah, so
Well, that's what I'm doing it now. Now my evening routine is, I drop the headset in, I go lay down, and I go about 30 minutes, 45 minutes of just listening. And it's been really, because I read it, I don't know, 2 years ago or something, and going back to it. Yeah, it's the deal is to be here. I mean, I even have decided now, not that I'll get there, but I'm shifting my context around aging. I mean, I'm in my 50th year of life now, and I grew up with this gnarly context of getting older, of like aging. And I thought the other day is like, wow, when I look back on these 50 years, they have been hard, they have been gnarly, but they have been phenomenal in so many ways, both for me and the world in a lot of ways, right? Watching evolution, see what's going on. I want to stick around for another 50. Like, like I would like to, and then from that, like everything flows. Like, okay, if I want to live to 100, what do I need to do to live to 100? And it would be curious to me, and I'm starting my TikTok thing is going to be a series of like what ifs, and one of the questions I'll ask there is, what if we just naturally all knew we could live to 100? Like that was the point that you got 100 years on this planet. How would that shift your context of life?
Yeah, that's I love those types of questions because they start to break constructs that we create and then forget that we created them and end up being a slave to them. And
Yeah,
questions like that take us out.
yeah, and just all the influence of like what people around you, and it's like, oh, I don't want to go past 70. I mean, there was a point where I was like, okay, cool, I'm ready to go, uh, and no, 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 no. I just want to like, I want to observe now that I have some freedom, now that past all of that and that's complete, and there's just kind of this new space opening up. It's like, I just want to see what happens. I'm just curious,
Yeah.
at this point. And think to live to 100 and be cognitively available and here for all of it, man, how cool would it be to be doing a podcast at 100 years old, signing off, being like I've completed my cycle. Think of the wisdom we would get from people if
Oh
we
yeah.
were if you actually lived to 100. I think it would change everything.
Yeah. I started asking myself more questions like this. When it comes to Zen Stoic philosophy, we have this framework of intentions and delusions. And the way you can look at this is on a meta level, it operates on the axiom of the purpose of life is to live it on a meta level. And everything else that we do within it, like all the meaning, is up to our free will and however we decide to create that meaning. But the purpose of life is to live it, and there are 5 ways in which we engage with life. We engage in feeling, thinking, doing, expressing, and being. And anytime that we're engaging in those things, we're being intentional because we're coming into this experience being very present. Anytime we're attempting to disengage from one of those things, as an example, attempting not to feel something and instead using like thinking and ruminating instead of actually feeling the emotion, or doing the action and going and working out instead of feeling your stuff.
Right.
And one of the pair bonds of intention and delusion around the thinking is understanding versus control. And I always found that understanding in its essence is leading with a question, leading with curiosity and a willingness to learn, whereas control is leading with a construct of language or a conclusion or a predetermined belief. And it's really interesting that you're asking these what if questions because they're leading with this sense of curiosity, which I believe is our natural state, is
Yeah.
to be curious and to want to learn.
Yep. Yeah, I was watching this. I don't know if you've watched it. Have you watched the series SEE on Apple TV?
Yes. Yeah,
With
I've seen
where
like
they go,
one or two
where everything
episodes.
goes blind, where the world
Yeah.
goes blind, over 500 years. Dude, I mean, I was just like, wow. I mean, what if? And as I'm exploring post my shot and a few other things and the things that have happened this year to really clear out my system, uh, I've just been exploring like physiological adaptation in unique ways, and we think logically today, like, oh, that would be awful, but we're taking blindness and trying to jam it into the world we know. What if that was the way it was, period? You would adapt to it. I mean, the human being is pretty amazing, right? Just the system itself. And you would find those adaptations necessary to function, the way you needed to function and survive. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to this year of just exploration on things and sharing. And I feel like I'm finally ready to kind of step out and teach and share and all this, 50 years of trying to fix yourself. You learn a thing or two.
That's
Uh,
right. Yeah.
yeah,
Pick up a few things. So
yeah,
on that note, like what are you most excited about right now that you are involved in or that you're creating?
yeah. I mean, I think it's a number of things. What I've decided to do is, I've really gotten away from the need to chase money or do any of that stuff. Or, I mean, I crushed myself for years having to do this, having to do that, having to look like this, or have these things, or be the just the insignificance of it has landed. And
50 years is all it
50
took.
years, the insignificance has landed. Houston, we have touchdown. Um, and so, I would like to, I finally feel ready to act, to be a real and true contribution, that my actions are aligned with my words, that my teaching is fundamentally sound in ways, or even just putting out theory and saying, okay, the kind of what if thought or the look at it this way. So podcast is back online at Mindset Radio, launching the YouTube channel here in the next probably 2 weeks at Mindset Radio, on YouTube, where I'm just going to be lecturing or putting out those thoughts or, kind of trying to create some unique and entertaining content, but really with, things like capacity and a variety of things that I've learned over the years in human performance, human behavior, and, everything I've spent my life doing basically. I'm going to open up a group on school, hang with Jeff, right? Just kind of a cool area where we can do some live Q&As, get some direct one-on-one support, and just engage, right? I have learned that I just love hanging out with people. Like I love just being in conversation, being around people, exploring things. And then post that, well, I'm planning, events. We're going to bring the meditation shooting event back, which I'm calling the unzipping, because that's exactly what it does. It just, whatever you're dealing with will show up that day.
Hmm.
And then, a couple of surprise retreats that I'm working on around that physiological adaptation idea, learning, exposing yourself to something radically different for a period in time to recontextualize some things. So that's kind of what's going on, man. Just easy flow and enjoying life. I mean,
Hmm.
that's it. Spend
Yeah.
more time focused on the kids, focused on myself, and that's it. I mean, that's life for me
Yeah.
right now. Yeah.
It's so cool that your own personal evolution has led you to that, because I know a lot of your experience has been in some rather intense realms of life and reality. So like what for you, what's the contrast of like being in this place now versus like where you developed a lot of your skill sets and experience in the past?
Yeah, man. It's funny. I mean, I don't know. I spend a lot of time with my guys, right, out of the community, out of the special operations community or the intelligence community, and especially guys that are taking on their healing or taking on things. Um, and the common fear for all of us is that we're going to lose this capability, right, this unique ability to do the things that we did, right, and that's a big, scary, hairy thing to think about. I've gone from being able to do all these things to this. And, I don't know. I mean, I would not, today I would not choose to go back into that environment, but I do feel like all that ability is still there should it be necessary. But honestly, I'm beginning to feel like some of those people I admire most, who, we talked about it before the show, like Stoicism, for instance, right? This ability to kind of fully regulate your emotions, stay in the context of the time, having space to logically consider, like using my full faculties. And, those people were, when I would come across those people, they were like gold to me. I mean, I knew they were capable of things I wasn't, and I didn't fully understand it, and so it's like, how can you be there? How can you remain calm without bombs, bullets, and burning buildings, right? Because in that, when the chaos outside was bigger than the chaos inside, totally good, no problem, right? No issue whatsoever. But when the chaos inside was bigger than the chaos outside, You know what I mean? Just pack it in. I could only sustain that for a little period in time. I was just out of capacity. I just didn't. I was at the threshold already and didn't know it. Uh, and so I think it's cool now because now I kind of, dude, I get to take everything that I've learned and every experience that I've had and all the things that I've done and now assimilate them into kind of this new being, right? This new central. I've said this now, and people get tired of me saying it, but it feels like someone reached in and pulled out my old, worn out, gnarly central nervous system that was like, if you looked at it, it'd be like, ooh, that thing. What happened to that thing? And put a new one in. And so, I'm being careful with it. Like literally, I have a team of people around me. Michael's one of them. I asked Michael the other day, I said, I need you to watch my back. I need you to, you know me well enough that if you start to see that angst or that anxiety start to creep back in and I'm not seeing it, I need you to tell me. And so I find myself cautiously moving forward now in ways and trying to now align all of that in the healthiest way that I can, and the stuff that didn't work and the exposure to stuff. I'm not putting myself in those conditions anymore right now. If something needed to be done, I trust that it would all be back in a second and we'll be good to go. But I'm building that own confidence cycle, right? I don't want any doubt there. Like I know if a moment came where I needed to bring in all those skills from my life, that they would be there when I need them. But for now, they're resting. They get to take a break. So yeah, it's kind of been interesting, man.
I think it's a great perspective to have and a really wonderful place to be able to get to within yourself. I know, like I experienced not quite the same thing because our backgrounds are different, but from the perspective of being a competitive martial artist when I was a teenager to not being a competitive martial artist, being more of a hobbyist now. I remember
Yeah.
I had like, oh, but if I don't train every single day, twice a day, then I'm going to lose this. And it like just recently, like as in like in the last couple months, have I actually relaxed and been like, okay, like that's all right. Like it's gonna be there if I ever need it, and I can enjoy it. I don't need to train in a way that, I was training as a kid where I was like, okay, I need to make sure I'm, on top of things because I'm the small kid, and if people ever bully me, I need to be ready, kind of thing. And it's like that's not indicative to my reality today, and I can just do it now for the love of it, for the fun of it, and
Yeah.
change my experience completely.
Oh, dude, I bet. And if you wanted to go back and compete, if you got that itch again, or like, man, I really want to push myself, then it's okay to step up the
Mm-hmm.
game a little bit, right? Because now you're like, now I need to be mentally capable. My body needs to be ready for this competition, but it's intentional, right? I think so often, I mean, I do look back at my life like there was not like an awareness of system and capacity to be intentional about the environments I was putting myself in constantly, right? There was, hey, I need to do this, or I need to be ready for this, or I need to push hard, or this or that. I mean, in the fire service, I used to run my people in the ground to the point where they had a mutiny one day, basically, like, dude, you're killing us.
Mm-hmm.
And my mentality was, well, then stop riding a fire truck, I mean, at the time, which wasn't really the right response. So I don't know. It's interesting, man.
It's certainly a different paradigm of existing. And one thing I wanted to tie this back to, because you said something really interesting with regards to people in the old environments that you would spend in, where when the chaos in the outside was greater than the chaos inside, then they felt relaxed, which I think is really fascinating. Because earlier in the conversation, one of the things that you had mentioned is sometimes we associate that feeling of safety to something that is actually like a miswiring, as in like we're associating safety to something that's not safe. And
Yeah.
in our trainings in the Liberation Coaching Academy, one of the teaching points on this is we call it safety in sameness, and
Mm.
like a fun little name called the reptilian hijack, which essentially is like you notice something that is, it might actually be in actuality safer than whatever your normal is, but because it's not your normal, you don't feel safe in it, and you like revert back to like maybe the more toxic version of what you think
Dude,
is yes.
I mean, the elephant, like I like to say, you go back to Buddhism, we're just a bunch of, we're big Indian elephant with a bunch of monkeys on top.
Uh-huh.
The elephant only wants what's familiar. Like it doesn't know good or bad, safe, unsafe. It just knows familiar. And that becomes the intersection. Like that's something I'm paying attention to every day. Like, exactly what you said. Where's my body trying to like take me to? And I now have the capacity to look into that circumstance and be like, no, no, we're not. That may be familiar, but not healthy or not good or not safe or whatever the wording is you want to be. And then redirect into something new. And going back to the breath, that's how you make the new thing familiar in the system, right? You start to apply whatever breathwork technique you want, right? That realigns what's familiar in the system in the elephant to the new environment. And you'll need, it's not like one and done. You've got to do that fairly consistently. Like you said, you have your people kind of sit in it for a minute, right? And do that exercise and work through that process. And doing that repeatedly rewires the elephant to be like, oh, this, got it, cool,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of another part earlier in our conversation. We were talking about how that 0 to 6, 0 to 7 range is when we're breathing in our original breath. And then as we're starting to essentially, well, one of the things that my girlfriend says, she's one of the teachers in our coaching academy. She says that when we are in that age range, 0 to 7, we are borrowing from the essentially the nervous systems of everyone around us.
100%.
We
100%.
know what we're doing. Yeah, she's a pediatric OT, so she's like always
Oh,
working with kids and stuff. So she sees this every day, and I'm just like, that is a fascinating way to put it. Like we're not even using our own nervous systems because we're still building like a scaffolding from everyone else, which I find mind blowing. That we essentially build how we act as adults from that range.
yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like at the project I'm working on, this book won't be out till probably next year, but the Anchored Human book, where I have a section in there on the anchored birth. And, if we think about it, and you've seen this, especially in the trauma centered world, where kind of birth has been created as some trauma in some way. I'd like to change that conversation anyway. But, if we think about it, like we go from radically safe, fully protected, everything that we need in utero into this world. And when we enter those very first moments, think about this. Like, think about it's gotten better over time with birthing centers, et cetera, home births, and this kind of evolution that's started to occur. But you drop into a hospital, dude. What are you being exposed to in your first moments on this earth, just from energy? You got nurses running around, you got doctors running around, mom and dad are everybody's riding everybody else's energy, and that kid comes out, and all that kid is trying to do is do what we as human beings know what to do, which is regulate to ourselves against the conditions. And in those very first moments of life, like that almost becomes impossible because there's so much energy in the space. And then our system gets confused of like, wait a minute, I was perfectly wonderful right here. What
Safe
happened?
and cozy.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Why did you bring me out of that space into this chaos? And just contextually, if we think about that, like, God, what if, I would love to see like anchored birthing centers where everybody knew the breathing techniques, doctors, nurses, parents, everybody was in the process. Everybody in that room had a regulated central nervous system, knew how to regulate it, and whether the doctor knew how to both regulate himself, or those around him, or whoever was in charge, was kind of like the central nervous system of the birth. And it was their responsibility to hold a calm environment and, bring that child into the world, pass off to mom and dad then take over. And they are not regulating the child, they are regulating themselves. So the child can then learn how to be safe, learn how to regulate themselves against all these conditions. Like if we could just do that, I think we'd make a big difference.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I get
So I
chills.
didn't mean to go off on a diatribe there for you. That's
No,
one
no,
of
no.
my,
I would love for you to go even further into it because I love this idea of anchored birth. And every time, like the first time you told me about it, I got chills, just got chills again hearing about it because I can see exactly how that would be a paradigm shifting practice or
globally.
custom that people could pick up completely.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I feel like if there's one thing I can leave behind on this planet before I go, it would be that, certified anchored birthing centers, um, and that just became the way it became because if we do that, and I'm creating this map kind of through the anchored birth, anchored child, anchored family, this environment where we don't even talk about emotions until 5, 6, 7, right? All we talk about are physical sensations. What do you feel like? Is there tension in the system? Do you feel heavy? Do you feel, and getting more associated with the actual sensations in our body so that then when I have access to my cognitive faculties and my thinking, I can now attach, oh, that physical sensation I get when this goes on, oh, we call that sadness or we call that anger, right? The problem is we're attaching a label of an emotion to a physical sensation early from an outside perspective. We're not inside our kids. We don't know. So, because I can say, I grew up at times, there were times where I was angry and this and that, but I felt like I got mislabeled constantly. And as this little tiny Jeff, I'm screaming like, no, that's wrong. I'm not angry. I'm terrified, and so as an adult, you grow up and that feeling of terror or scared or unsafe becomes whatever mom and dad labeled it for me. And I really think I think the path forward gives us an opportunity now that we know more about the central nervous system, more about physiological response, more about dorsal vagal shutdown and all these things that we didn't know 15, 20 years ago even, or if we did, they were just kind of being figured out. I think we've got an opportunity to really like make a shift in humanity in this way, right? In the education, the understanding of, hey, this is in simple. I mean, it's not like what would that take? Nothing, you know? I mean, it
Breathing.
doesn't really, huh?
It would take breathing,
Yeah,
actually.
that's it. That's it. That's it. I mean, here you go. This is all you got to do. This is, you don't have to go pay for all these things or do all this stuff or do all these magical whiz bang things or spend a ton of money. Just, during pregnancy, here's the process. Here's what it's going to look like at birth. And when you do that, you're actually giving yourself space for if things don't go right. You know what I mean? Like that's what we're missing. We're missing the space because we're already at max. And then if something goes wrong, you got to have a C-section or baby's not coming out correctly or whatever, we have no space to operate. And then if baby comes out, into that space that everybody's like just around, I mean, Merry Christmas, welcome to life. you know,
This is what we got.
sorry, I mean, like, can we, I don't know. I feel like I was finally able to, after wearing out a lot of people in my life, unfortunately, pull my head out of my ass and understand the depth of this. And so, yeah, man, I mean, it's just a part of it.
Yeah.
And I really do think that was a leading issue for me early on. Like I didn't want to come out. I knew it wasn't a safe environment to come out into, and so I think I came out terrified and angry. you know, yeah,
It makes sense, especially, I mean, I do a lot of this work with clients. When I work with my one-on-one clients or when we're training them, we're teaching them this process called fourth door, which essentially allows somebody to get to the root cause of their major negative emotions or traumas that they come in with. And a few really fascinating things. Number one is invariably there's at least one of their major negative emotions that the root cause was birth.
yeah,
At least one. for everybody. So
Yep.
it varies. Sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's
Yep.
like shame. But for a lot of people, it's at birth as we access the unconscious mind and they recall these things. The other thing that I think is really fascinating that you were sharing here is the labels that we use for the sensations that we have. Because a lot of the time when somebody's saying anger or somebody's saying sadness, like my anger is not your anger. And what I found when I go through this process is when I'll bring somebody through and I'll ask them before we even go into like removing the charge, I just say, what emotions were you experiencing in this moment at this root cause of X emotion? And half the time, the actual emotion in question, let's say we're releasing anger or sadness, is not anything of what that person was actually feeling. That's just what they got taught to call it and to label it, which has blown my mind because I'm like, okay, so it doesn't matter if we feel the actual like worded or labeled emotion, but it's what are the sensations that haven't been felt or that want to be felt in this situation. So I find it fascinating that you were able to essentially unpack that in yourself and being like, this isn't anger. Like I'm terrified right now. Like
Yeah.
I'm not angry at
I'm
all.
scared. I don't want to be here. I'm not happy. This sucks. This is hard. And and we forget, it's just interesting. I mean, it's just the way we've gone about it. It's not like anybody did anything wrong. You got to think years ago, we're trying to figure out how to put words to things going on inside. And so emotions are nothing more than a label of sensations. Emotions don't exist in the meat sack. Sensations do, but emotions don't. Sensations that start to come out or present a certain way get labeled, but internally, that's just a sensation. Until it's expressed, that's just a sensation in the body. And then the expression of that comes out in ways that then we can call, hey, this when this expression is this, and then check in and be like, okay, so the way you're acting, I would observe as angry or sad. Is that really how you feel inside? Like, what are the sensations that are connected to that? I mean, think about how much more we'd be able to regulate ourselves rather than, I mean, for what, the last 100 years or more, we've been in a society that's going to tell us what to do and how to feel and how we should feel. And the feelings that we have, we're going to let them define them for us. And we really have lost control over our own systems. Yeah. And not by anybody's fault. It's not like some sinister plan out there. It's just the way we have gone. I often wonder if language itself screwed us up. If we if we if we had been better just grunting at each other or,
Just making sounds.
minimizing. Yeah, like you had to regulate um, off each other. I have a retreat plan for that I think is going to be a lot of fun.
That
Um,
sounds awesome. Please let
yeah.
me know when that's going on.
Oh, dude, yeah. I think it will be. I think it will be a lot of fun because as you begin to limit certain things or reduce certain things or have to find new ways to communicate, it's an exposure point. And the thing is, unless we have some reference point, like I mean, I will tell you, post my shot in this last year, kind of feeling like it's been
Can
a
you
whole
go into
release.
what the shot was
What was I going to
for?
say?
Oh yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
totally lost my train of thought. Everything I feel now is new. Like I didn't know you could feel this calm for this long. Like we go back to where I felt calm was in a crisis that was bigger than mine and totally good there. It's what made me really good at my job. I was like, sure, I'll go sit in this burning building. I don't care.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like it's better than what's going on inside.
Mhm.
Sure, we'll go travel around the world and do stupid shit. Better
Mhm.
than what's going on inside.
Mhm.
It was like relief for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so now in this new state of being, and I told you this earlier, it's like even the sensations that come up, I would say for most of my life, all of it was collapsed into one thing. Like everything was centered into me. And over this last year, I can actually feel it come up from me, but not like a part of me. It's very weird. Like even if I'm very sad, I can stop in the middle of that sadness. And, for instance, if I was like sitting with mom or whatever, like one time I was sitting with mom, it was just the two of us, and things just started to release. And I'm just sobbing, and all that crap that was tucked in is just pouring out last year. But even in the middle of that, I was still wildly in control because I would literally stop and I would look at mom and check in and be like, "Are you okay? Can I continue to let this out? I don't understand what it is, but it's coming out. Like I don't want to stop it and I don't know that I could stop it." And she would be like, "Yep, I'm good." And she just sat with me and let it expel out of the system. And just weird, man. But, that happens before. It's just like all of it, right? It's me, it's all of it. It's packed with like shame and guilt and disappointment and all these crap things that I don't, I think that are put on us, right? I mean, we kind of talked about that, right? They got handed to us. And so I feel clean is a way to describe it, right? That I'm actually able to experience what is mine as mine, not anybody else's, and then navigate it appropriately in the context I'm in. It's crazy, man. It's weird.
It's super liberating as well, especially with something like that, because you're able to feel, based on what you're describing, it sounds like you're able to feel emotions without identifying with them and taking them personally. And just the emotions are almost like information that hasn't been able to get through, and now it's finally able to get through.
Well, and it's like I don't feel bad about feeling bad, or I
Right.
don't feel bad about feeling angry. I don't feel it's, dude. I mean, these are things that I may have logically known before, but did not know in like,
Mhm.
or I would feel like I told you, like in these interim pockets, but it wasn't sustainable for me.
Mhm.
I mean, legitimately, man, I'm fully aware my system was broken. Like there
Mhm.
was damage that
Mhm.
needed to be repaired, and I don't think we give that enough credit either. I think
Mhm.
it needs to be balanced between what I can do, but like one of the things I talk about now and encourage people now, it's like if all of this feels like too much, maybe you try it a little bit and okay, it feels okay, but it's not sustainable or not there. The probability that there's damage to the system is very high. And
Mhm.
so, you know, I mean, because I ran my head up against the wall for years. Well, it's got to be ego, or it's got to be this, or you should just be able to, or blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And it's like killing me inside, literally. And now with the sense, it's like, oh, there was actually physically something wrong with me that needed to be corrected. And now that that could be corrected, now all that stuff is like, oh, cool, no big deal.
Yeah.
Sweet. I'll go
Yeah.
breathe for 10 minutes. Yes, please, because I want to hold this. Like, this is, oh, what I was going to say earlier. I now have an anchor for what is possible in my system. And I didn't have it before. So I didn't know how to get there necessarily or how to sustain it when I had it. And, these days it's now like, nope, this is going to stay. We're
Mhm.
going to do everything to stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What was the shot that you were describing? Like what did that do for your system? Because you were basically you figured out that something was not working the way it needed to be.
Yeah.
What's the shot that you ended up doing there?
Yeah. So a couple years ago, it's fairly new. I found out through my good friend who when he was number two at First Special Forces Command, Lieutenant Colonel there, oversaw this program. They were doing it at Bragg for the the fellas and the ladies out of certain communities. And basically, what it is, it's called the Stella Ganglion Blocker. And they go in. It's a shot that they go in into your neck, right about here, and they reach down into the end of the amygdala. And I'm screwing this up. I'm actually getting the actual doctor on Mindset Radio to dive into this thing.
Awesome.
But basically, what it does is it deadens the nerve endings. And so, if we think about it, dorsal vagal shutdown or any damage to the central nervous system, to the autonomic nervous system, or whatever else, starts to prevent regulation, emotional regulation. Like you just don't have what quote unquote normal people have. You have a very limited window. And oftentimes that window is then just highly emotional. There's not a lot of space, there's not a lot of capacity. constantly angry or constantly, filled with anxiety or whatever your kind of primary thing is. And it feels very defeating. And so what it does is it goes in, deadens those nerve endings, and it gives your system a chance to actually relax. And it's not a miracle cure. It's not like, boom. I've known guys that have blown through it because they didn't change their conditions or didn't. I mean, everything. We left brute force, moved, changed it all. Like I knew that if I wanted to keep this and if I was going to keep this, everything had to change, everything. And so that's the road I've taken on. And it basically, it gives you just enough to then do the actions, do the breath work, do the meditation, do the things, take care of yourself, right? To bring your central nervous system back into a more freed up space. And, they don't know how long it lasts now because it's kind of been all over the map for people. If you go right back into the stress you were in, you're going to blow through it. Matter of fact, it's probably going to make it worse because you don't have that guardrail that keeps all that crap like perfectly packed. That thing I refined over 50 years is gone. And so, you're experiencing things differently. You're way more, I told you before the show, I feel like I went from level 5 asshole to highly sensitive person in about, 6-7 months. Because I feel things now.
Yeah.
Dude, it's like, what? And I've had to stop myself and be like, whoa, what's going on? Why am I sad right now? Like, why am I this right now? And really look and be like, oh, and I can see the line of it. It's not even a return to old ways. It's this whole new thing that kind of can be a little scary too. There's been points where, I looked at mom mid-year and was like, if this doesn't clear up, I mean, I called back to the doctors and they're like, well, if you don't feel like it's working, we can bring you back, do another one. But as I gave it time, and they say it takes about a year to set in, depending upon who you are and stuff. And it's right on track with it. I mean, and it's, and I've just had to kind of navigate this time period with it. But I'm not kidding when I say it feels like somebody yanked my old sort of system in, put a new system in. That's what it physically feels like in the body. Crazy.
Yeah. It's like a total change in your life experience. And what I find fascinating about it too is it reminds me of the Grinch movie with Jim Carrey when like his heart grows and he's like, "What is this?" He's like, "I'm feeling." It's like exactly like that. I had something like that happen last year actually, as I started actually reconnecting and feeling my emotions because I was in my body. I wasn't thinking about how I felt. I was actually feeling them. And it, like you said, it's raw. It's like, holy shit. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
I'm used to dissociating from all this shit.
Right. What is this? This is real sadness and I'm okay to feel it right now, or this is real nervousness or whatever it might be. Like, yeah, man. I mean, the cool thing is, and I've done a lot of other work, a lot of other programs and psychedelics. And I mean, dude, I'm like, if I can't fix this, I'm not going to be here. I mean, that's truly how I felt. And so, a lot of great aha moments and eye-opening things and connection upstairs with stuff, but none of it came out this way. This was just like a slow leak, if you will, in a way. There was no great, powerful, oh, this is the problem, that we kind of naturally look for now, right? Go to a weekend with Robbins and everything will be perfect, or whatever else. We're looking for kind of rapid solutions. This was not a rapid solution. And what I don't know is, it alone, does it produce the same result? I mean, if I think about the work that I have taken on and done and put myself through or exposed myself through over the last 20 years, like everything is culminating, and I think it's just brought a different sense of peace to my system. I told you this, like last year, I bought a Bible. I haven't read the Bible, prayed, connected with God since I was a kid. I grew up in a very weird church environment and just pushed away from all of that for a long time. I went through a phase where I was angry with God, and then I just went through a phase where I was just kind of neutral about it. But bought a Bible. I have my morning prayer time now. I do my morning devotionals. I think all of it coming together in this time and place, what the shot did, it gave me the space to do all the other things. The shot didn't fix me, but it gave me the space to really now do the healing work. at multiple layers. And so, I'm not a big fan of like, hey, this will fix you tomorrow. Because I've tried everything that, hey, this will fix you tomorrow, and hate to break it to
Yeah.
you.
I
Yeah.
love that you brought this up, because what's interesting is about some of these really amazing solutions that can create big change for somebody in their life experience and their nervous system, all these things. The one thing that they all have in common is that when you come out on the other side of them, if you do not act in a way that is aligned with the change that you're intending to make, it will revert itself back to what your nervous system thinks is safe.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
it's like aligned and inspired action in the direction of the new intention, I think is key, because there, like even the work that I do with people, they'll let go of stuff that they've been holding on to for 20, 30, 40 years and have these massive changes and revelations. But it's also important at the same time for them to live in accordance with those massive changes and revelations that they've had. Because even the way I look at it is that we're all sovereign. We all have dominion over our system. Some of us know it, some of us haven't remembered that yet. And
Hmm.
everybody's on their path with that. But just as much as we can do the change work, we can choose to undo it through our actions and through the environments that we choose to put ourselves in. And I think it's just a testament to you going into what was unfamiliar afterwards, into what was like truly like peaceful, safe, and created
Yeah.
contentment and allowed your system to get on board and familiar with this new paradigm of living.
Yeah. I mean, I basically took 6 months off, you know, I needed it. I asked for some support for the people around me, and I knew that I just needed it, and I needed to not do Jeff's normal, because Jeff's normal would have led him right back into same space, right? The I would have blown away the opportunity I was given, and I didn't unnecessarily understand that before, and I didn't feel like I had the ability to change my environment before with the other things. Like would the other things have worked? Maybe, but I would have needed to also then radically change my environment.
Mm-hmm.
And and some of that wasn't possible at the time. Just, I mean, it could have been, but it would have been devastating in many ways for a lot of people. And then, ultimately it becomes devastating anyway. So, what you just got to choose your choice. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Which, but, and devastating is not the right word, but, impact. And so, and I feel like I can even be responsible today for the impacts that I've had on people over my life, without that heaviness or without that weight of like guilt and shame, like true empathy, right? A true understanding of what it may have been like to be in the experience of me at times, and a commitment that that's going to go away.
Yeah.
That's all, and I'm happy about that. So, previously it would have been like, oh, bad Jeff, shame on you, go sit in the corner kind of deal,
Mm-hmm.
which just propagated all of that. Whether that was coming from outside or whether that was coming from internal didn't matter, same result. And it just kept me in that same loop and same cycle. So I think I'm grateful for the way life had gone and has gone, that has given me the space to settle back. And yeah, now it is like the number one priority is protecting my system,
Yeah.
at all costs. Period. End of sentence. Like
I, I
that's
love
it,
that. Yeah.
dude. I
It's,
mean, even in micro moments. I told you this morning driving in, I had a podcast to record this morning, and I called my buddy and was like, dude, I can't do this, man. I just dropped little man off. I need to kind of, re-regulate, re-anchor my stuff. I'm, all because it went into him and then you and then on with the day and da 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 da. And I was like, I can't do it, man. And he's like, no worries, brother. And so I literally came home and spent 45 minutes, binaural beats and relaxation points and my rhythmic breathing cycle, my return to original breath, and got up and I was like, oh wow, it worked.
every time.
Feel okay now. Like I feel
Yeah.
back to where I want to feel now.
Mhm.
And so I have sat in the depth of that feeling of feeling okay and feeling safe with myself. And now that I know what that is, I know how to get there, right? I
Yeah.
know the tools and the things I can do. And if a tool's not working, I've got another one. You know what I mean? Like that's just how we got to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and it seems like your practice with this is normalizing it as like this is how my reality goes. Like, and whatever the echoes of your old reality are just that. They're echoes of something old. They're the past, but they're not who you are today.
As Alan Watts would say, they're the wake of the ship,
The wake of the ship. Yes,
wake of
exactly.
the ship going off into
Yeah.
disappearing.
Yeah.
Yep.
100%. No,
Yep.
that's beautiful. And one thing I wanted to ask you was a little bit more about the anchored human. I know
Yeah.
this is a book that you're in process with, and I'm curious, like, what is the intent of the book? I know we talked about it a little bit before, but you mentioned some things like the anchored human, the anchored parent, and
Yeah.
I love this topic because it is using safety and almost like fundamental well-being as a beginning,
Yeah.
not as the destination.
Yeah, totally. Totally. It's interesting as I was writing last year, I was kind of running up against things because, this question of safe is such an important piece, right? It's such a critical piece. But in the writing, what I found was I needed to be able to reference more around this idea of safe, right? And so I transitioned my book launch, like the couple that are going to come out over the next few years. And so I've brought the book Fuck Meditation up to center.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Well, and because here's the deal. So that book is 100% about understanding the central nervous system and what safe feels like in the body or could feel like in the body. And meditation is a beautiful example of how to break that down. Because I mean, I've had people who can't even close their eyes, right? Most normal people, hey, go sit on a cushion for 10 minutes, their head will explode. Every client that I've worked with over the years, almost every conversation, the first question is, "You're not going to make me meditate, are you?" And I kind of laugh and I'm like, "Not like you think." And so, I believe we have confused people with meditation, right? We've made it this big necessary thing that you have, we've made it a to do, not an opportunity. We've, constructed it in ways that people are like, I can't do that. You want me to sit on a cushion for 10 minutes quietly with nothing going on? You're out of your mind. Like people can't it's like getting money, right? It's a disruption to the regular central nervous system because it is wildly unfamiliar. And so through this journey, we begin to break it down into different steps or stages or concepts or ideas and put a little practice into place where you can ease into it. And even if you never sit on a cushion, but use this technique or that or whatever, it may work for you. It may just be fine for you, right? Not everybody needs to sit on a cushion for 10 or 20 minutes or an hour. I mean, it would be great, but it's that in and of itself is not always necessary. Right.
Correct.
And so the first book coming out, it'll probably be out by fall now, is Fuck Meditation. And then that gives me kind of the reference point to really dive into the meat of the anchored human process, right? Which breaks down into different categories. But somebody made a comment one day. They were like, "Oh, from the untethered soul to the anchored human." I love it.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect, right?
It's the other side of the same coin. I mean, like,
Yeah, well, it is, right? And so, conceptually, the way it kind of came out for me when I was a kid, we used to go to Nags Head, North Carolina every year for vacation, like Duck and that area. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but that's where the Wright brothers took their first flight. And there's these big sand dunes kind of back off the ocean. And guys would fly these massive kites. I mean, like the whole performance kites, right? That are just doing all kinds of things and they're working it hands and feet. And it's, got multiple things on it. And I would always sit and be fascinated with both the kite and the flyer. And, in this process, I was like, God, how often that we want to be that kite. We want to fly and be ourselves and be free to do what we believe we were put on this earth to do and have that freedom and experience the flow of life and the wind against us and, be able to dance beautifully against the sky. Like that's what we want to do. But we're taking our anchors and it's like, I'm going, hey, Victor, here, fly my kite for me.
and then I will take the credit for how nice it.
Totally. And then are you going to actually give me the freedom and it's impossible, right? Because you're going to fly it the way you want to fly it. And so conceptually, as I thought about this, it's like, we don't necessarily need to, we can't fly without some anchor. We can't express ourselves without some core components in anchoring our systems. And so part of that is, how do we go through this process in a deep way to find those anchors of true safety, right? Not familiar, but safe. And that can be as a leader, that can, so you've got like the anchored leader, the anchored parent, the anchored child, the anchored birth, is kind of what these avenues I'm going to lay out for people as examples. But even in partnership, like, we are responsible for ourselves. And unfortunately, when I grew up, that was not the norm of how you parented. And so it's like, I had a conversation with a little man the other day of like, hey, dude, I realized all growing up or maturing is you learning to take care of yourself. That's it. You brush your teeth in the morning. You get yourself dressed. And at some age, you will drive yourself to school. And at some age, you will get a job and you will get your own place. That's all it is. I want you to keep all this awesomeness you've got, the fun, the wonder, the excitement, the playfulness, the curiosity. I'm not going to take that from you. You need to keep that. And the only thing we're going to do is just figure out how you begin to learn how to just physically take care of yourself, physically, mentally, and emotionally, right? Spiritually. How do you do that for that's it. That's growing up. And, and so that requires, these anchor points along the way as we go through life or into partnership or into work or whatever it might be. And like you've said, and I've said the same thing, it's like, then you will become the central nervous system of your family or your team or whatever it might be. And so if I'm anchored, if I'm stabilized, then I can get everyone around me stabilized, right? It was the contrast. If you go back to my days in the firehouse, great on the fire ground, shit show in the firehouse, right? Crisis was great. I'm super calm. I'm the central nervous system. Everybody, my chief even told me one day, he's like, dude, I don't understand it, but when you pull up on the scene, I can feel this calmness come around, right? And it's because I was good. I was finally in the environment that outweighed me. But then in the calm spaces, no. So how do I bring all that together? And then how do I find those anchors so I can it's not one or the other, it's all together. And so that's going to really be the concept that we look at. But most importantly, the reason for the anchored births aspect is I'm going to take you through that line of life, right? And if we don't have them, or we're giving them over to other people to control or manage or do whatever with, it ain't ever going to work. That's it. I look for people to tell me I was okay all the time. And then when they would get close and realize I wasn't okay and that went away, then I would get frustrated, right? And then I would get angry and then I would get resentful. And so yeah, that's the exploration of this kind of anchor human concept. It's that ability to anchor yourself in, assess what's going on, regulate your central nervous system, and then act accordingly based on the present conditions, not the forecasting or, the back looks.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. I feel it's going to transform whatever our normal is for when we think of parenting or how to do parenting as this information spreads, as more people practice it. It very much falls in line with the whole mission that I have, which is liberate yourself, liberate humanity. Because by liberating yourself and being resourced, being regulated in yourself, it affects other people. Like whoever's energy is more anchored, so to speak, is going to ultimately dictate the energy in the room.
Yeah. Yeah. And that anchor point, and it is the expression of what is that anchor point? Like, my energy was anchored in, in a normal space, in a non-crisis environment, in something not, I don't know what the word would be, not good. We'll just, we'll just layman terms, right? And I was anchored into something. And so this powerful energy that is Jeff, or this, as I would show up and be in charge and do, unknowingly, I'm dysregulating everybody around me, not intentionally. And then it's like, I now look at D, if he's like, can I have dessert? I'm like, I don't know, buddy. How would you feel if I added sugar to your behavior right now? And he's usually like, oh yeah, probably not good. I'm like, okay, well, then we're not going to add sugar. We're not going to pour gas on the fire. And I realized I had been doing that with him. I had been like, I'm trying to compensate and, hey, can I have this? Sure, kiddo, you can have this. And I'm trying to compensate for something rather than going, if I give that to you right now, what's going to be the result? And then communicating it with him now, because now he's like, even I think last night he was like, can I? He's like, no, and he just corrected himself. I was
Well,
like,
that's self-regulation right there. There you go.
yeah,
I find that incredibly inspiring the way that you describe parenting from this perspective, because I'm, an aspiring father.
yeah,
My lady and I we're in those conversations at the moment,
good,
and when I think about it, it's like what you've done there, which I found really fascinating, is you essentially gave the question back to him for him to check in and be like, no, like he checked in with his own system, his own feelings around it, his own sensations, and was able to make his own decision, which is an incredibly empowering thing to start to instill and give him back his sovereignty at every opportunity that you had.
yeah, yeah, and he won't do that every time. You know what I mean? Because he's not there, and that's what I think I've learned to tell him. I'm like, hey man, I'm not here to tell you yes or no. I'm here to check in and help you make choices now, and um, and I can see the immediate shift in him around things, um, which is cool, right? And because none of us want to be told what to do. I don't care what age you are. We want to feel like we've got a say in where we are. And so that's kind of been the thing. It's like check into where you are. And, it's like this is a fun one. I tell him, that energy bump that he gets, and it comes at like 6:20 for 3 days in a row, it came at like 6:25. I mean, because I looked at the clock, I was just curious. That energy bump post dinner, blood sugar's kicked up. He's kind of got that space, that energy and stuff. And I say, hey man, you know what the beautiful thing is? I say this is actually your body's designed this way so that you have an opportunity to train yourself how to regulate your own energy, because contextually it's time to bring the energy down, but it's giving you this surge, and so here's a chance to practice in that surge matching the energy to the environment and the time, right? And bringing that energy into the right context, because now we're going to sit in color, and now we're going to bring the lights down, and now we're going to do these things. And so I've gone to kind of this full environment now in the house where, and for years I hated it. I was like, got to turn the lights on. I got to be able to see. Now, sun going down, lights go down in the house. We calm down, gentle music goes on. We do a puzzle, we color, whatever it might be. And I give him the space to ride his energy wave there, right? In that evening hour. I give him a little bit of space and then encouragement around. It's not like I'm like, you can't do this. Just notice this. Okay. Do you need a little more time? And, maybe he pulls out his jujitsu dummy and needs, 10 minutes to just express energy because it feels too big for him to manage. Okay, cool. Then go wrap up the dummy, right? And get after it and get on it and get that out and get it to a space where then you can regulate it. So I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, man. I'm just trying every day. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, I find it incredibly inspiring to hear about it. And it's like, I'm like taking notes. I'm like, all right, these are some of the things that I will implement upon
Yeah, man,
becoming.
I don't want him to, yeah, because I want him to be confident and capable, and I don't want him riding my energy. And I know he did for a long time, and so, but there's space, there's resilience in him that we can, it's not I didn't give him a life sentence. We can work together, and when we're doing those things, I'm doing them with him, right?
Yes.
I realized that I was not always the best example, that I would, do what I say, not what I do kind of deal. And so just remodeled life. And it's just beautiful to have the space to do that now, man. That's just wasn't possible before, honestly, for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you found that space and you're really enjoying it, normalizing it. It's a beautiful thing to see. I had two more questions before we
Yeah.
wrap up. The first one is, I'm sure some people are listening to this thinking to themselves, okay, like where can I start to, regulate myself and whatnot. So if people want to know more about the work that you do, where's the best place to find you and access some of these things that we discussed today?
Yeah, so it would be I've kind of limited my platforms. And I'm not overworking myself. So Instagram is kind of my primary. Like I do a morning thought in the mornings. I just kind of do these different things. TikTok, I'm blowing out a little bit. My daughter's giving me some coaching on how to be effective on TikTok. At 19, I'm pulling that out. And, yeah, she's a rock star anyway. You need to go listen to her podcast from this week. She's totally changed up resolutions to what's in and out, and her vibe. You would really enjoy it.
Awesome. I'll definitely check it
So
out.
Mindset Radio on the podcast, which is available everywhere. The YouTube channel at Mindset Radio will be coming up with just different lectures and teaching and kind of going deep into these areas. And then I'm Mindset Radio on TikTok as well. On Instagram, I'm actually Mindset06 Actual. I'm collapsing the two together. And then if you follow, the website mindsetradio.com or whatever else here shortly, the group on school will be open where, I just want to be able to connect with people and give them real thoughts kind of in the moment, right? Because I feel like we need a healthy community to support us. And so, $10 a month, come in, live Q&As, you get discounts in the events, you get first right refusal. Like I don't want to put events out into the world. I want a group where I can just fire it in and people are like, okay, cool, we're doing that. And then if it doesn't fill, we'll put it out to everybody else. But yeah, I would really like to build a community that is wildly supportive because I want to learn from people. Like I want to hear what's going on in people's lives. I've had this massive breadth of experience, not to tell you what to do, but maybe, I borrowed wisdom from people my whole life, and I still do today. I'd love to, offer that out to people at times. And sometimes it's just about, hey, here's maybe a different perspective or a view or a different way to think about it, right? Because I don't think we've done a good job at learning how to think in a broader perspective. We have a very narrow focus on many things. And so that's where you can come hang out, chill out, hang with me, learn, information's free, right? I mean, that's why I believe like learning and information. That's why I'm just going to crank it on YouTube. It'll be my legacy. Hopefully it'll just be there forever. And, 100 years from now, somebody's going to find, like people have gone back to find Alan Watts. Maybe one day somebody will find Jeff Banman and be like, oh, I remember this dude, way ahead of his time. Or, I've never heard of this guy before, where he's been hiding. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's just, I would like to leave a really positive contribution in the world. And so those are the areas I'm going to do it. And then the books as they come out, right? I'd like to be the place where I can be publishing at least one, if not two a year over the next couple of years. And just having fun. I don't know, man. Come snowboard with me, come surf. You want to go to Costa Rica and surf? Let's go. And that's where you can find me. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Well, I'll definitely want to have you back on when Fuck Meditation comes out. That's going to be awesome, and I would love to get into that book with you. So my last question before we wrap is, what does it mean to you to live a liberated life?
This conversation right here. I mean, everything that we talked about today, honestly, and that answer would have been contrived maybe before. Like it would have been logical and it would have sounded right, but it would not have been connected. And I think today, this morning's a great example. I was fully in charge of myself this morning. I could identify where I was. I could identify kind of tension in the system or excess energy that needed to come out, that if I ignored would stay, and took the action that I knew to take to navigate that. And it's that simple, right? It's actually just the recognition of where I am and what I need, and the willingness to then do it. I wouldn't have done that a year ago. I'd have been like, nope, got to do this, got to do that. And So yeah, man, all of that's what it means. Finally, it's like, oh, I don't know if you can see that. Like, go back and just look at the old podcast. Look at my face difference between the two. It's just like,
It is felt the difference.
yeah, dude. I mean, it is liberating. It is wildly freeing, and I think my trepidation before was I didn't know I didn't know if it actually existed. Like there were days, dude, I would sit and wonder, is everyone else just as full of shit as I am? And we're all screwed up, or am I the only one or whatever? And now that I've come to this place, it's such a beautiful spot. Like I want to protect it, and I'm willing to do what is necessary to protect it and honor myself. And so that's what it means to me.
Amazing. Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show, man. It's always a party having these conversations with you.
Always something.
Yeah. Looking forward to having you on again, brother.
Thanks, brother.